Hello and welcome to another edition of History After Hours podcast. My name is Kevin Puvery and with me is
Ron Franklin.
And also
Keith Todd.
And we are going to discuss several things. First of all, this is season 3, episode 8, I believe. We're recording this on October 18th, 2017 for posterity, as this travels around the world. So here's a topic that people have been talking about quite frequently for the past 6 months: impeachment. So let's talk about the standard of impeachment, first of all, and then we can bounce around what could be impeachable, what's not.
Right.
First of all, the standard is this in the Constitution: treason, bribery, and other high crimes and misdemeanors. So with that being said, what's it going to take?
That's kind of vague, though, don't you think?
Right, I
I
mean,
mean, I'm sure it's vague on purpose. A lot of the Constitution is, right?
Yes, I would assume it was written that way. I know Madison and specifically Hamilton, especially about the abuse of the pardon power they were worried about. Mm-hmm. If you know your history, they just got out from under a king. The Constitution, it was going to be hit or miss whether it'd be passed anyway. And so they definitely wanted to limit the power of the president. And, they did in a lot of ways. But people were scared of this. So talk a little bit about impeachment, and then you guys can talk a little bit about Trump if you'd like, because that's kind of the subject of the day.
All right, well, so I want to pick up with the constitutional history, because you hit on it exactly, that they weren't really sure that what they were doing was going to be accepted. The Confederate Congress nearly censured the committee that did it anyway, because they had exceeded their mandate.
Was there ever a time, I don't mean to interrupt you, but was there ever a time when they considered, I think about the Roman councils, where there were 2 of those. Did they ever consider more than one executive officer as a check and balance on itself inside that branch? I wonder.
Well, Rome operated under a triumvirate there for a while, right?
Yeah, well, so you'd have 3. They basically abandoned the council system at that point to bring in a 3rd guy. Mm. So I just wondered.
I think that might have been more talked about, but it was already pretty much a consensus that if this thing passes, George Washington. I mean, he already had it sewn up as the first president, and his leadership alone.
You didn't want to offend that guy.
Yeah, and I think you take Washington out as president of the convention, that Constitution might not be respected, or he was the key ingredient, even though he didn't really do a whole lot as far as the actual nuts and bolts of the Constitution. Right. His leadership, though, but yeah, so they definitely were scared of a president, and everything they were doing was really illegal, because according to the Articles of Confederation, it takes 13 out of 13 states to change anything. Of course, they just decided
9/13 will be good enough.
Yeah, Rhode Island didn't show up, so we're going to change it anyway. All right, so that's the standard: treason, bribery, and other high crimes.
Is that what took them so long to ratify it? I don't think they actually ratified the Constitution until the 1970s. Something weird like that.
I think we're still
Rhode Island was really late coming to it.
Yeah, I don't know if that's
I think
date,
Texas has a problem
like
with
that.
it.
But even then, even some major states, Washington State, Virginia, the only way that they agreed to sign the Constitution was that they were going to get promised a Bill of Rights that was going to further limit the government, because they were just so afraid of it getting too much power.
So here's a big question, and this is the question: can you impeach? Let's just talk about Trump, because that is what they call the pink elephant in the room, because that's, of course, so a large part of the country disagrees with him, and not only disagrees with him, can't stand him, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. So he's unlike any other president.
Who have been the loudmouths calling for impeachment? Because I know there have been a few. Do you know anybody right offhand? Mm-hmm. Anybody from his own party?
No, I couldn't name a name. I saw an interesting article
from his
last
own party.
night,
No.
that was arguing that Hillary Clinton could still be president, and this is how we make it happen.
Oh, Lord.
And they were like, so Trump resigns, and then Pence resigns.
Let it go.
And they just go. And then, finally it got down to...
right. Let's just go ahead and clear that up. That's not going to be a thing.
Right, it's not a thing. But it was this pipe dream about how we can still make Clinton president. It's like,
was this person on drugs? I mean, what were they...
Well, so their argument was, you get down to the Speaker of the House, they appoint Hillary as their vice president, which there's no way Paul Ryan's ever going to do such a thing. And then he resigns, and so then
I don't
she
know.
gets to be
Paul
president.
Ryan and Hillary kind of tight.
We have to write another book. What happened too? Okay, so here's something, because this is what people...
It was crazy.
You've got groups of people saying that Trump has to commit a crime to be impeached. You have another group that say it doesn't matter if he commits a crime. Well, actually, neither is really correct.
Yeah, all right. What's the real thing? What's it?
Okay, so apparently, if he commits a crime, it depends on the crime. Jaywalking is a crime. Avoiding your taxes, which that actually might come to fruition, that's a crime. But neither of those, even shoplifting, there could be major crimes involved. But if it's not an abuse of his presidential power, then it's not an impeachable offense. It has to be. But that also means it doesn't have to be a crime to be impeachable. For instance, if he decides he's going to go to Paris, I heard somebody talk about this. If he decides to go to Paris on a 6-month vacation to play golf that is an abuse of his power as president, and therefore Congress could
Because
step
he's
up.
not there to do his job?
Because he's not carrying out his duties as president.
Oh, okay.
But as long as he's carrying out his duties as president, and as long as he's not abusing his power, specifically the founders were concerned about the abuse of pardon power. Like, let's just randomly pardon everybody in jail. Let's just pardon them all and let them all out of jail. Or a specific group. You could imagine, we're going to pardon every cop that commits a crime. That, of course, is an impeachable offense. So it could be a crime. It doesn't have to be. But it does have to be basically an abuse of power.
Who determines the level of abuse, whether or not it's impeachable or not?
If it is determined to be an impeachable offense, it goes to the House of Representatives. And by majority vote, they determine whether he is up for impeachment.
Well, I mean, the original idea, is there like a petition to impeach? Is that how that works?
It originates in the House. So
okay.
One of the members draws up articles of impeachment.
Okay.
This is why they bring it, get it brought to the floor, and then they vote on it.
Then, if it is a majority, it goes to the Senate for trial. So they have a big spectacle. They literally have a trial.
Mm-hmm.
I think the trial is presided over by the Chief Justice, if I'm not
I
mistaken.
believe you are correct.
I think so. The Chief Justice comes in and sits where the Vice President usually sits, and they have a trial with lawyers, and they figure out. And at the end of it, the Senate gets to vote in 2/3 to actually remove from office. Now, that's hard to do. And it's supposed to be hard to do.
Right.
We shouldn't be able to impeach presidents just at a whim.
Yeah.
So I think
Because
that's
you don't want to
good.
do it just because somebody may be angry at him
Right.
over something that they may have found offensive that isn't really. I mean, you can make a big deal out of anything,
Right.
And so you want to protect the president from just sort of arbitration that is frivolous. Is that the idea?
Yes. But with Trump, now let's talk specifically about Trump and his personality. Trump's different. He says things that are politically incorrect. He tweets things at leaders of other countries that we would consider very different.
But being an ass isn't an impeachable offense, though, right?
So that is the question: can his personality, his behavior, if he goes to make a speech and moons the crowd because he's mad at him at a rally, is that an impeachable offense?
Is it weird that I don't think that that's out of the realm of possibilities?
No, I mean that's where we're at. That could happen. He gets mad enough, drops his drawers, and all right, guys, how about this for your wall?
I mean, I think at that point we start talking about mental competency, which is another aspect of it. If you become mentally incompetent or just physically incompetent,
Yeah,
if a president has to undergo surgery with anesthesia, then they're not president anymore. Vice president assumes all powers if the president is incapacitated in some way.
Is that another reason why Roosevelt hid his polio condition?
I think so. I think was just a stigma attached to it as well.
That's always what I thought, but I never
issue.
thought about the idea that he could. I don't know. Can that disease advance to where you're?
It's degenerative to some degree, I'm
Yeah.
sure. Mm-hmm. Well, and I talk about this in class. I don't think we elect Roosevelt if people know he's in a wheelchair. And as a matter of fact, I would challenge: do we elect someone today? Do we elect someone today, no matter how their competency, if they're rolling in a wheelchair and they give their speeches?
Right.
I don't know.
Right or wrong, it still carries such a stigma
Yeah.
in society. That would be a really interesting thing.
Well, is it Florida's governor that's in a wheelchair?
Yeah, I don't know.
I think maybe.
I don't know. Is the White House handicap accessible?
I don't know.
I mean, presumably under ADA it should be.
Yeah, it should
But
be. The People's House.
That's a good question. I don't know. But that's okay. So let's finish this conversation.
Okay, all right.
Apparently, and we've had presidents that have been. Woodrow Wilson had a stroke and was pretty much incapacitated for the last few months of his presidency, but no one really knew. Back at that was a different time. But obviously, there are things going on with Trump. Apparently, the vehicle to remove someone for their capabilities, their mental, physical capabilities, the vehicle would be the 25th Amendment, which is another little thing for impeachment, which means a vote by the vice president and the cabinet. Now, I don't know exactly, maybe y'all know what happens after that. Does it then go to the House and then the Senate?
Wouldn't it have to? It seems like it.
Seems like
makes
that maybe.
sense.
So maybe instead of originating in the House, the 25th Amendment
You
allows
can't, because
for
otherwise
that.
it's a coup d'état possibly, and that's not what you want.
Right.
Right. Well, and I mean, the only people, the members of Congress and the Senate, with the possible exception of the President of the Senate and the pro tem and the Speaker of the House, they're not going to have regular interactions with the President. So they're
Yeah.
not going to know. His people who are going to know and be able to notice something like that is going to be the Vice President and the Cabinet, the people he interacts with on a daily basis.
Do you think that his age will? Let's say that he finishes this term strongly, and people sort of support him, like, oh, it's changed. He turns over some sort of new leaf, and he gets more support from people who are now sort of detractors. He gets into his, let's say he gets reelected into a second term. He's going to be 74, pushing 75 by that point. There are already questions about his sort of mental acuity at this moment. Do you think that then becomes an issue in a reelection bid 4 years from now?
Well, obviously it could. I mean, with age, you do lose cognitive function. We talked in the podcast last week about his speaking ability has definitely changed from the early 90s to now. A lot of mental health experts tie that with his age to some degree. I think here's another challenge, though, with the 25th Amendment and removing someone, is these are the people he appointed. These are, he picks his running mate. He appoints these people. I mean, they all have to kind of get together and to do this. It's a very difficult, it's never been done.
But have you ever seen a president isolate his cabinet members the way he's done, though? I mean, just the idea about calling out sessions when he doesn't exactly do what he wants. And I know he's not part of the cabinet, but at the same time, he was appointed into that position.
Right.
But
he's had cabinet members leave already.
But he's had people leave, and he's also had the chief of staff gone round and round, the communications people. But Tillerson, I was thinking about that specifically because he's sort of called him out on a couple of things here recently.
Oh yeah.
And then
I thought it was a matter of time before he was gone.
Yeah. So I just wonder, does he, in an effort to do his job well, Tillerson, I mean, does he then sort of partner up with some of the other cabinet members and go, look, this is really problematic? I mean, I don't know. I guess that could be now that what you're saying, right?
Yeah, it's weird. Well, once again, Trump handles his cabinet different than I've ever. I mean, to be honest, I don't pay attention to this up until Trump got elected. I didn't go around the cabinet of the president and see how he was treating them. It wasn't even a thought of mine. And now people are coming and go. I mean, I'm paying a lot more attention to politics, as most Americans are. At the end of the day, I think it's very difficult. I think, of course, collusion, that's an impeachable offense.
You talking about if the Russian thing?
If it
It's opened
pans
up
out,
somewhere.
what's his name, Mueller, if he has real deal evidence that Trump knew that this was going on at some point during the election process, that he allowed the Russians to corrupt our democracy to some degree, that would be, I think, the only way. And once again, it could be another year or two before anything comes out, because as of now, it's not Trump. It has to be him, not necessarily his associates.
Well, all right. So we said a while ago the two presidents that have been impeached,
Andrew Johnson.
in the 1860s, yeah.
Yeah, and that's because he violated something called the Tenure of Office Act, which is basically they set him up to fail on that when they passed this new law. He removed a cabinet without the Senate approval, and Edward Stanton, I think is his name. But anyhow, so the House moved to impeach him. It went to the Senate, and he was acquitted by one vote. So he was not actually removed from office, but he basically was powerless after that. And then, of course, the other one we all saw on TV,
Right.
Bill Clinton, was also impeached by the House, acquitted by the Senate.
Which was about the Whitewater scandal, not Monica Lewinsky. That just got drug into it. What he did with that, his sexual morality, was not what was actually on trial. They just made political hay with it.
And that ties into Trump, because your character is not really an impeachable offense. It's not abusing the office of president.
I wonder how many people actually think that he went through that impeachment process because of the sexual misconduct allegations.
I'm sure the vast
I
majority.
bet because that was sort of the way it was touted, even though it wasn't really what it was all about. That was tied in a weird way. And so I just it's always fascinating to see the behind the scenes story and what people sort of take from it. What's the reality that exists? What do you actually think is going on, and what is going on may be different.
Let's say, just let's look ahead just a little bit. Let's say, okay, first 6 months have happened. No major legislation has been passed. I hear there's a prototype for the wall, but we don't know where this is all going. Let's say things just kind of keep rolling like they've been rolling. Is he the Republican incumbent in 2020? Let's just say things kind of stay the way they've been.
I mean, will he get the nomination?
Would he get the nomination from the Republican Party when they have a chance?
There's a possibility they could abandon him, especially when he speaks in such a way that he tends to isolate people and call them out just hardcore online, but also like in speeches in public. You call people idiots, you call them losers, you call them this and that, and but then you turn around and go play golf with them or you have lunch with them, and we're best friends again. Right. It's a real weird sort of back and forth dynamic. But I don't know. Like I think if he isolates enough people, or enough people who are saying, you know what, I've had enough all the way around, I may not come back myself. You think about McCain and his illness. You think about who's this other guy that's been calling him out quite a bit?
Croker? Is that it?
Corker. Yeah,
Corker?
Bob Corker. Yeah, something
like that.
And so, but even people on his own side who are like, you know what, I don't have anything to lose by speaking my mind. I'm still in this though for an amount of time. They might not really give him a lot of support, but I don't know. We'll see.
I think that would be precedent setting, though. I can't think of an incumbent president who hasn't just automatically received the nod. They haven't automatically.
It's not
received the
automatic,
nomination.
though.
It's not an automatic.
Well,
process.
usually what
I just can't
happens.
think of one.
Usually what happens is they test the waters in the primaries, and if they get swamped, they won't run.
Can you think of one that
Truman?
Okay.
He took over after assassination, barely got reelected. He realized he didn't finish in the top 3 or 4.
Here's
and he
one.
backed off.
How about LBJ?
Johnson.
Would he have taken the nomination? He stepped out before they could even go through that process. He's
Yeah.
like, I'm not running, but I wonder if it's because he knew he wouldn't get the nomination if he did.
I think so. I think they ran numbers. He knew.
I think he ran the numbers, but I think also just the war had weighed him down so much. I think he wanted out as well.
It is rare. It is rare for a
I think
president
he
not to be
wanted
the automatic bid, even an unpopular president.
But I mean, I do think it's possible. I think what might actually be more likely is that we're looking at another Bull Moose Party type situation.
Woohoo!
I do think we're looking at the Republican Party, and they're splitting more and more. They're divided more and more.
You might see that in the Democratic Party too.
Yeah, the
though.
left is kind of making some moderate Democrats move too.
That's true, and so we're as fractious as we've been since I think the 1860s, 1850s.
Oh, that'd be great. A good centrist party arise out of this thing.
Yeah.
Everybody settle down.
yeah. And so I think I think a third party situation, if somebody else does run and makes a real bid for the nomination, and he doesn't get it, I don't think he goes away.
Yeah, I think it also depends on who runs against him. Who are these other Republicans that might want to go against him? I mean, obviously you got Kasich, you got Rubio, you got some of these guys that.
What about Paul Ryan? I mean, seriously.
Isn't he tied to Trump now?
I don't know.
I think
don't
that
know.
all depends on his success as speaker. I think if he has a good 3 years as speaker, I think maybe he throws his hat in the ring. If it doesn't go well for him, I think he backs out. I don't think he goes with it. We talked a little bit about Trump's age of it and that being brought into the mix, though. I think that all depends on who the Democratic candidate is.
Yeah.
Because if you have Joe Biden, who decides he wants to throw his hat in the ring, I don't think he brings up age. If we get some young guy come in, we might.
Right. Okay, let's switch gears. This week, John McCain received a Liberty Medal, pretty prestigious medal for his lifetime of service, both in politics, the war. As you know, he was a prisoner of war for 5 years? Mm-hmm. And of course, Donald Trump in his campaign said he wasn't a hero. Of course, he was, I don't know what caused him to say that. I think McCain probably criticized him.
McCain criticized him. I mean, this was payback in a sense.
And I like my heroes that weren't captured. So they've had this contentious relationship. Of course, with the health care bill, McCain does his famous thumbs down, and the health care bill sinks by a vote. So they've had this back and forth. McCain made a speech at this ceremony. I want to read just a little bit and then I'll get y'all's reaction. So here is John McCain quoting, "To fear the world we have organized and led for 3/4 of a century. To abandon the ideas we have advanced around the globe, to refuse the obligations of international leadership and our duty to remain the last best hope of earth for the sake of some half-baked, spurious nationalism cooked up by people who would rather find scapegoats than solve problems, is unpatriotic as an attachment to any other tired dogma of the past that Americans consigned to the ash heap of history." Yikes. What is he talking about there?
Wow, he's calling out the current administration without calling names. The entire speech was very well done. Actually, I listened to the whole thing just before we came in here, and the idea that he's alluding to ultimately is the idea that true patriotism is about the best qualities that we have, not these rancorous sort of taking one side over the other, with like the inclusivity of America and the promises of America and the things that we've been striving for to better the union itself, to create something more inclusive and to reach out to people in need and to be the ones who, stomp on tyrannical political systems from our foundation. That's what we were trying to do, to up in tyranny, to create something more egalitarian. And so that's what the essence of it was. And then he took that moment to just straight out call Trump without saying his name. Everybody knew exactly what he was talking about. You could hear the reaction of the crowd. People were sort of stunned that he actually went to that level. But I think it was to call out Trump very specifically for some of the nonsense that he spews on a daily basis, but also as a rallying cry to the people who are centrists, who I think ultimately the bulk of the country is, to get up off their butts and to rally around the true meaning of what it means to be an American and what America dogma actually should be. It's not this hardcore, trashy rhetoric that we've been seeing from both sides, as a matter of fact, but to come to the center and come together and actually be the best of who we are and be that beacon on the hill like we proclaimed ourselves to be, and to have leadership in the world. Because I tell you what, this is the honest to God's truth. You go back and study every bit of this. The world that we live in today, with the political systems that we see and the economic prowess that we see around the world, not just our own, but the stability that we see and the lessening of poverty, all of that was built right after World War II, when we dedicated ourselves to rebuilding Europe and to chasing down and to hunting down
Marshall Plan
tyranny. Yeah,
Right.
Marshall Plan itself. We created the modern world. And so there come obligations with that, which I think that he is feeling like we're abandoning. And as someone who's actually served the country and actually put his life on the line and to stayed with his men, even though he could have had a chance to get out of his imprisonment in Vietnam, but he offered to stay with them. The idea that he's watching somebody who comes along who's had basically a golden spoon in his mouth his entire life, and it only takes it out long enough to insult people. I think he's rubbed him raw, and he's had enough. And I really think that's part of what that was about.
Well, and not that I disagree with you, but I want to kind of take the other side of that a little bit, throw it out there. Is what McCain is advocating for here, is it imperialism by another name? Is it that we've been on top, we've been controlling the world for the last 75 years, 3/4 of a century.
Yeah,
is it time for that to change?
I didn't really read it that way, though.
Well, no, and I didn't either. That's not what McCain is saying.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that. But I do think that a lot of people who support Trump's perspective, they would say that it's time for us to stop being the world police. It's time for us to Marshall Plan America and stop worrying about the rest of the world.
But take the reality of that and switch it to where you understand that we are only who we are because we reached out to other people, because we built those up, and the stability that we have and the foundations that we have for a middle class and all of the technology and the work ethic that goes along with that. Every bit of that was part of the process in helping other people get themselves up out of their problem moments, right? So we created us at the same time we were creating them. It's the different America after World War II. From civil rights aspects to gender issues to sexual liberation, whatever that happens to be for whomever it is, the idea that we were leaders in industry, and he admitted in the speech, it doesn't always go well. It doesn't always go like we intend. But the idea of abandoning the good that does come from that, and you can filter out the bad as we go through, because we change our process when we realize that it's not working for as many people as we want it to. And you're not going to make everybody happy, and it is kind of imperialistic in its own way. But the idea that we, at this moment, should abandon our responsibilities to ourselves through working with the world and supporting those other folks, I think.
And I agree.
I think that's what he's saying.
I agree with McCain's speech, but to your point, Mr. Todd, isn't that why Trump was elected? To unravel, to dismantle, to shrink, to pull back. Is that not what he was? America first. Forget everybody else. We're going to redo our treaties. We don't have. I mean, isn't that why he was? Is it Trump doing And listen, we had a podcast the day after the election, and I was like, "Oh, there's not going to be this. There's not going to be." He has changed the culture. He might not have done. He might not have done things legally as much. He hasn't passed legislation that might be permanent. He's done a lot of executive orders, but if nothing else, he definitely has changed the culture to some degree. And I think that's the reaction, because your elder statesmen don't like to see everything they've worked for 30, 40 years to be pulled up, to be our influence diminishing.
Everything goes in cycles, though, and he's taken his message resonated at the right moment for him to get this to work for himself. I think if you come out of 8 years of recession and people are still hurting from that, and you haven't seen a full recovery like they had hoped, and a lot of power ends up flowing to the upper 1%. And I mean, we've had that message on the Democratic side too, Bernie Sanders for sure. Yeah. People are still hurting, and that's the thing. But he took that and amped it up for his own political gain, rather than taking the reality of that. If we pull out of a global system, you're actually cutting your own throat more so in the bleeding hemorrhages rather than slowing it down. Yeah. Right. So, like I said, people are hurting, and that's a necessity to deal with. And I think that Trump was sort of keying in on that. But his plan to focus on the idea that we need to isolate ourselves to improve ourselves, and that's all we can do. If we isolate ourselves from the rest of the world, we are actually in more trouble than people realize.
We've seen that time.
So that's just a miscommunication.
Right, and I think you're exactly right, and I think you've hit on that, and what McCain is warning about. If we turn totally inward, if we become that isolationist us first all the time, we are de facto going to lose our leadership role in the world, and that means receding it either to China, to the European Union. If we step back from our role that we've had over this 3/4 of a
create
century,
a power vacuum that will be filled by somebody else, and they may not have the same kind of temperament that we do.
Once you fall out of that leadership role, I mean, historically, you don't get it back.
We don't always do a good job with what we're doing. That's granted. Mm-hmm. And there are people here who need definitive help. Fine. But at the same time, the isolationism is never historically the best route to go.
Right. So the argument that we fix our country first and that keeps us great in the world, I think you automatically are ceding your leadership role in the world, and you don't get that back.
Okay. So that wraps up that. So speaking of Trump, let's talk about scary movies.
We're living one.
We're living in a scary movie. Yeah. All right. So we're all close to the same age-ish. Some people younger, some people older, some people in the middle.
Right.
However, let's talk about scary movies. It's getting Halloween time. What are scary movies as a kid versus adult?
Yes.
What do you like?
Scariest movie you ever saw as a kid, like something that just kept you up at night worried that something was coming through your window.
I mean, not just because we've had the remake in the movie, but for me it was It. It was the original It.
Yeah. It was It.
He had that scene where his red nose came up out of the drain. I had a drain in my house that looked just like that. And that haunted me in that bathroom. I didn't use that bathroom, I used the other one because I was afraid of his nose coming up out of there. Absolutely, as a little kid, that one got me.
Funny.
Jim? Franklin?
It's a Stephen King one. So it's kind of funny that you would say that. I watched most of Stephen King's I'm struggling to get the name of it now. It's the vampire one. Salem's Lot. Sorry. Salem's Lot. My mom was watching that as a miniseries on TV, and I remember kind of wandering into the room and seeing what she was doing because I was intrigued by it.
Miniseries.
It's vampires and stuff. And I remember standing behind her chair, peeking out around and watching, and her slapping at me going, if you're going to watch this movie, get out here and watch it, but don't stand behind me like that because you're messing. Actually, I was shaking her chair. And so I got it and I was watching it, and there was one scene where this little boy's in bed and his buddy has died and the vampires had gotten him. And they buried him, they had the funeral, and this kid's laying in bed, storming outside, and he's got these big bay windows up there. It's like he's an upper floor thing. And all of a sudden he hears something, he looks up, and his dead friend is floating there in front of the window, kind of scratching on the window, wanting in. And I was like, oh, hell no, I'm out. I ran out of that room, boy. And every light on the house from that point forward for months, like I was terrified that there was any noise was like some kid floating outside my window, boy. It got to me. And it's funny because I look at that now. I've seen it recently.
No, yeah.
And I'm like, that was so stupid. But I was, 7 or 8 at that time? But I remember being afraid, yeah.
I didn't watch many horror movies as a kid, but I remember it distinctly. If I had to go with one that I didn't see but heard about enough where it scared me, it was the first Freddy Krueger, Nightmare on Elm Street. My sister and brother are a lot older than me, and I just remember hearing about this guy that gets you in your dreams, so I was scared to go to sleep, and I heard about a girl cutting her, or hearing about a guy that cut his eyelashes or his eyelids off to try to stay awake. I remember my brother telling that to my sister. Did you see that part where they said he cut? And I was like, okay, that's it. And eventually I did watch it, and I don't get scared at horror, gross, Saw, all that stuff. It's more the thrillers that could be real. So for me, or maybe some demonic stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, it's going to be the real, like Saving Private Ryan is a great movie, but I don't get scared. I get disturbed and when they're up in that bell tower and the German is slowly putting that knife into his
that's
chest
rough.
and he's begging for his life, that disturbs me. I don't really get scared
There's an emotional intensity.
it's different. It's different than horror, I guess you'd say.
But I think it touches on the same nerve, though.
Oh, The
ultimately.
Ring. Once again, The Ring kind of scared me.
There's so many hack slasher movies and this and that, and some of them are good. Like The Conjuring and some others I've seen that are like, that's creepy.
Insidious.
There's a little, so right. But then there's others that are just obviously just trying to play on. Wait a minute, you and I talked about this, didn't you? When you saw Blair Witch Project, didn't you go with the?
I
You
thought it was a documentary.
real?
Yeah, I had no idea. I'd never heard of it. Somebody said, "Hey, I heard about this. Let's go watch it." I went in there thinking, "Oh, wow. Oh, it's a real documentary because the camera's moving. You could tell it's not professionally edited." I thought, "Oh, what's going to happen to these kids? Am I going to witness a murder?" And then as it kept going, and I'm so scared right now, and the tear coming down, I was like, "What's going on here, man?" So yeah, I was freaked out about that, and it wasn't until several days later that I realized somebody said, "No, they set all that up." I was like, "What is?" Yeah, I was kind of scared.
Dude, when I saw it advertised, I thought it was real. 2 days before I went and saw it, somebody goes, "Dude, they set that up," and I was like, "Oh." So it kind of ruined it.
Changed
But
the movie for you.
yeah, but it was still, it was intriguing though.
Any modern day stuff for you?
None of the modern day stuff gets to me.
Yeah.
I haven't. I think the most recent movie, and it's not recent at all, that got to me was The Exorcism of Emily Rose.
Oh, I remember that. Yeah,
I've
exorcism
seen that.
sometimes.
That one got to me, and that was like the original Exorcist.
Yeah.
Like when I saw that one. I think I was like a freshman in high school.
Yeah, demonic
that one
stuff
got to me a
kind of
little
gets
bit.
to me a little bit. Yeah.
Just because with the things that go bump in the night, there's still that part of my lizard brain that's in there somewhere that makes me think about stuff. But
yeah, it's funny how things seem so different as a kid, but when you hit about 16, 17, and you get, it's so different. The world just changes.
But yeah, all the recent stuff, it's more about shock value and
the
slasher
jump
films
scare
and
stuff.
jump
Yeah,
scares.
it's not really.
So it's a movie that has genuinely scared me in the last 10 years.
I'll give you,
one.
here's a technique that I was told and I couldn't believe it. It works like a charm. If you're ever watching a scary movie, period, and it's coming up to the intense part and something's about to happen,
The violins are
it's
going.
better to plug up your ears and keep watching. It'll be less scary than if you close your eyes because it's 90% of it. It's the music that goes real, and that's what makes you jump, and that's what I hate. I hate being in a movie that I know I'm going to jump if I hear. So I will do that. I will plug up, but I get to watch. So you still know what's going on. So try that next time. It's coming up to a big part. Plug up and keep watching and seeing it's not anything.
I tell you what I like to watch though are these like older movies like Charlie Brown Halloween stuff, like those specials that used to come on once a year when I was a kid. Like if you
Pumpkin
missed it on
Patch.
TV, we didn't have VCR and whatnot, so if you missed it, you just missed it till next year. Those are and I was like bummed, right? So with the magic of all our modern technologies, you can watch it anytime you want to. So I actually still like to watch those. And there's a Disney thing with Ichabod Crane. I always loved that story.
Oh, I remember that.
You ever read that short story?
Read, come on.
It's really well done. Like it's got, as you're reading it, it gets suspenseful where you're like, oh geez, what's gonna happen? Even though I know what's gonna happen, it's a little different than the sort of the video versions. Yeah, so it's cool if you ever get a chance. Audience members, like go read something every now and then.
Y'all want to do the Thriller dance real quick before we sign off? Okay. Probably not.
Do the Vincent Price laugh.
Oh yeah, I can't do that.
Yeah, all right.
Next screech. Okay, well, hey, that is another episode. I guess episode 8 of season 3. What else? Oh yeah, you can find us on Facebook and Twitter and SoundCloud. Search History After Hours. We're also on YouTube, History After Hours. We are sponsored now by Lakeside School District.
That's right.
So we have a sponsorship. It's the school we work at. Thank you, Lakeside, for letting us do this. And so, signing off, we will see you next time. Goodbye.